Hey there! A common question many people new to photography ask is, what is my sharpest aperture on my lens? The reason they're probably asking that is they've seen a lot of videos, like some of mine, that say to take a really sharp photo, there's a whole bunch of tips you need to follow, and one of them is to use the sharpest aperture on your lens. And you want to know what that is? That's a good question. There's no one answer for every single lens, and even within a manufacturer and lens type, 24 to 105, there could be some variability. While manufacturers like Canon, Nikon, and Sony obviously have very, very tight manufacturing controls, over the years you're gonna have different production runs, and just assume the 24 105 mil with Canon that you have and that I have, if they were bought in different years, could have a different sweet spot aperture. So I'm gonna show you how to test that right now. It's very simple. The key things before we get into it, you're gonna need obviously have a tripod, your DSLR, your lens, of course. You want to be doing this indoors. You want to have a subject that's going to have a fair bit of texture to it, so you can test this out properly. And you want to be able to have a good controlled lighting environment. For my test right now, I'm in my daughter's room. There's a lot of light coming through the window over here. I've got the light on above as well. And I'm going to do a few tests to see if I need to use a flash or not, but I don't think I will. If you have studio lighting, even better. You want to have your subject in a position where the studio lighting is just hammering in on it, not overpowering it, but want to make sure it's well lit so you can keep a low ISO for this test. And I'm going to show you how we do it. It's pretty simple. What I've done here is I set up a stuffy police lineup. These three usual suspects will be photographed. I've got my camera set up here on a tripod using many of the techniques I normally use to take sharp photos. I recommend mirror lockup and all the other settings that I typically give you, and we are going to start testing every single aperture opening with this camera. So you can see in my camera here, what I've done is I've popped up the ISO a bit just because we need to have it a little higher because of the lighting in here. I just checked. I'm going to start at f4. Just hold it down for a second to make sure that it is a pretty good exposure. You want to make sure your exposure is in the center. If it were a bit lower, you would want to adjust it using the dial trigger, and it's going to adjust the shutter time on you. So we'll keep it in the center at 4.0, 320 ISO. We'll take the first photo, and I'm using timer. The reason I'm using timer is that even pressing the camera, the shutter release on a tripod, if you don't use the timer, could have slight movement, which is going to impact your clarity, your sharpness. So you want to eliminate that risk to be able to evaluate the most sharp aperture setting you have. So I just took 4, now I'll do 4.5. I will take that next photo, and you notice we kept in the center for exposure. And you're going to have this in aperture priority mode when you're doing this. And we're just going to step up every single aperture setting you could use. Just keep on going one up, taking a photo of your usual suspects here, and then I'm going to see you in Lightroom and we're going to do an evaluation. Okay, now that we're over on my computer, we're going to open up Lightroom and we're going to take a look at the photos in there. So the first thing we're going to do is import the photos and videos. So once we find the directory, select all the photos that you took in the photo shoot and click import. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go through each of these photos one by one, and we're going to take a look at which photo is in fact the sharpest. So when we're going through them, what you could do is, if you want to know which photo you're looking at, and if we're looking in the library mode, you can go on the right hand side here on metadata, and you're going to be able to look right down over here under exposure. It was 1/60th of a second at f4, so this would be the f4 photo. And what I will usually want to do is zoom in and find an area of pretty good detail. So we can take a look at this. So we could see, maybe if we had like a spot like this where we have the yellow ribbons in focus, some of the fuzzy hair not in focus here, purple is certainly out of focus. So as a typical f4 aperture at this distance, you're going to have a lot of difference in focus and clarity and sharpness. So what we're going to notice is anything that is further from the point of focus or closer to us from the point of focus is going to be less sharp. So if we jump to the next one, we're going to see we're at f4.5. If we kind of toggle between the two, we can see, yeah, slightly sharper, but not quite there. Jump to the next one. Give it a second to load here. You can see maybe some bits of the hair getting a little sharper there, just jumping back and forth between the two. Now we're at f5.6, as it's loading. Getting better, getting sharper. And as you're going through this, you're going to see that we're just looking at every single shot and taking a look to see what's actually going to be really good focus, very sharp, and which ones are not going to be that way. This is getting pretty good. The details are getting a lot better here. Certainly on this pattern here and on the pink flower, it's a lot better. And at f9, I think we hit the most focused overall so far. Everything is very good. Let's just jump back over to f4 for a second for comparison. Big difference. Look how blurred all of this is versus if we go to f9 back here. All of this much more in focus. So let's jump up one more aperture. And loading. I don't know. We have to kind of go between these two. This is a little tricky. I honestly think f9, yeah, you know, where you want to look is actually right around here, where, kind of in this area where the hair is on the rabbit. If I go up one stop, you can see some of these little hairs right there off of that rabbit have gotten a slightly less sharp. And it may not be as clear in the video to you, but to me on my monitor that's the case. And as we go up, this is loading now. Same kind of thing. I'm now losing a little bit of sharpness, even though the focus versus the depth of field might be a little better now, but the sharpness has gotten a little worse. So here we can see the depth of field is in fact better versus the f9. But when I look at certain parts that are not related to the depth of field, like even up here, I can see the differences. We're going to see as we're moving up for aperture that we hit the sweet spot at f9 on this lens. So that's really the process you need to do. You need to do that for each of your lenses, and you want to find, like I said, a control object with a lot of texture and detail to take a photo of. You want very good lighting, and you want to make sure indoors ideally, because you don't want wind affecting something that might move around. Perhaps you're doing tree bark or a brick wall or something. It's not going to move from the wind, so you'll be fine. But you definitely want to have well lit and an unmoving subject and consistent. So when you take your 14 or 16, 18 shots, whatever it is, you will have the exact same object unmoved and the same lighting for all of them, and then review it in a program like Lightroom or Photoshop or whatever program you use, so you could see how clear it is and where the sharpest aperture is on your camera. Hopefully this was helpful. Hit subscribe down below. If you have any questions, give a comment. If you try it out, do comment in your comments for me to let me know what lens you have. And in fact, just tell me that right now, and then come back and give me a comment about where you found your sharpest point, so other people can compare and see if they got the sharpest point with the same lens or not. Like the video, share, and I will see you soon.